Okay, this is a video about circular references. There's a circle, and it's the fourth time I tried it. I'm really getting sick of this. I'm going to show you how to resolve circular logic without using the iteration button, without a copy and paste macro, without a goal seek, and without the solver. And I'm going to try to show you what's wrong with all of these. And instead of using those methods when we have a problem, in this case, the problem will be the debt. We're going to put in a target debt to capital ratio, and then we're going to have some interest that comes from our debt, and the interest will affect the interest during construction, which affects the cost basis for our debt to capital ratio, and we have a problem. Now, normally I make a little diagram. In this case, I put the wrong diagram in. Now, if you want to find this file, if you're looking on the website, the file, I'll call it circular reference exercise. How about circular reference with debt to capital ratio? If you look on let's look on the I'm not going to look here. Let's look on the Dropbox. On the Dropbox, you go to Chapter 1, Project Finance Models, and under Project Finance Models, go to the exercises. And why don't you get the one that's named Exercise? Let's put 23, Michael Jordan's number. Circular logic from fixed debt to capital ratio. Okay, that'll be the one. Now I've put some data in here. We have a 4-period construction. We have an EPC cost that's fixed, and for now I put in a debt commitment. Now this is going to be the big problem. Right now that's simply an input. We also put a target debt level that we're going to use with a goal seek. And then our equity commitment is the difference between the debt and the total amount we spend on a debt. In this case, we're not going to capitalize interest, and we're going to put in a fixed debt to capital ratio. Now I put 0 interest here, and I compute the amount of the debt that's funding each period on a pro rata basis. Funding percent pro rata. Okay, so why don't we put some documentation in here? Alt D L for the data validation, and let's put debt funding. This is the debt commitment. Oh no. From above multiplied. Oh shit. By the construction percentage. And I didn't tell you here that our construction, does this work if I do it multiple times? I think construction, assume equal per year. We might relax this assumption later on. So that copies it here. If you wanted to have this data validation and copy it here, you do, oops, Control C, Shift Control, right arrow, Alt E I S, oops, no, paste, Control C, E, paste special as validation. Okay, I could have typed an N. All right, and the interest rate is a changing variable. We can put different variables year by year, and this is just the EPC cost. And now I put 0 here, but we're going to add all the interest that we have. Interest recorded. Come on. This is the opening debt balance. Switch to French. Times the rate. Okay. I think that's enough of this kind of stuff, isn't it? Okay, and then now that all seems to be working fine, but we haven't put any interest in. So let's make our interest rate 10%, shift control right arrow control R. Now we have a problem. The total debt to capital is not the 70% we thought it would be, because we have a higher base that includes the interest. Now, what we can, why don't we make a little check here and put computed, target debt ratio and computed ratio. Our target was the one we put in, and the computed, now you can see that this almost looks like a goal seek. And let's make the difference, the comparison of those two. Okay. It doesn't work. Now, if I, up here for our famous input, I'm going to go even crazier and make this one maybe, let's make it gray because that's so important. If we take this input and make this number the total, we can make, let's make that the total cost multiplied by our target debt ratio. I hope you can see that there's going to be a circular reference problem, because this interest during construction is computed from our debt, our sources and uses on our debt schedule. But that is driven by how much debt funding we have, and the debt funding comes from the up here. So it's pretty obvious that that's a circular reference, isn't it? And we press OK, it's a circular reference, and it tells exactly kind of where it comes from. All right, now this method I'm using, I neglected to say this. For the first method, this is we'll try the iteration button. All right, and show you just how disgusting this is. Okay, you go to the options, go to formulas, and you can click on enable iterative calculations. And everything works. Oh, a difference. What a perfect method. How could I say it was bad when it's great? Great. Oh, what a horrible word. Let me tell you what's wrong with this method. Okay. First thing as I'm going to do is save the file. I'll show you two things that are wrong. I'm sure other people could find more things that are wrong, and I would love some comments on some of these things. If, let's just say, I go down here and I type in the letter A, I get a value. Now, I think the natural reaction would be to press Control Z, or to press the iteration to undo. Now, before I do this, I've got to tell you, pretend you were working on a model all day and you were like me and forgot to save it. Okay? Then you still get a value. The whole model becomes completely unstable. You can't use half of the, not half, but a lot of the tools you used before. It happens to be if we delete this and we add these together, it all works. But you can see the model becomes an unstable model, and that is not a trivial issue. It's just not trivial at all. Another thing that happens now, I put this target det here, and we'll put the target det and find the construction, the EPC that results in the target det level. Okay, so that's what we want to do with this one, and we can go down and let's put the target det. That's just, we just get that from up here, and let's put the computed amount. I don't have space to put the det level here, and we have a difference. So let's take the difference between these two and compute them now. All right. I can tell you something right now. If I go to options and formulas, I'm going to make the accuracy just, I'm going to put the iteration button down. Here's why, because the goal seek doesn't work when you use the iteration. So if I wanted to go to data and what if analysis and goal seek and set that value to 0 by changing the EPC cost, that's what I said we would like to do. I press this, it says circular reference, and it gave me some crazy number. It would have gone around and around if I hadn't switched the iteration button thing. So I'm gonna put this back maybe. Okay, this is still not a very high number. All right, that's, what a perfect example of how crazy things go. Okay, there, that's our circular reference problem. Now let's talk about ways to do this. Now what I did is I'm gonna record a macro right now, and I'll call this M, shift control M, and if I show all comments, I said, well, here's the problem with this method. It makes the model unstable and the goal seek doesn't work, and we could probably find a whole other thing that doesn't work. Okay, and now let's just fix this macro. So why don't we make another macro called comment 2, and how about we'll make it shift control Q, and I'll just switch the macro off. So if I press shift control M, it goes on, shift control Q, it goes off. And if we can't remember that, let's make one more macro in this sheet. Why don't we, oops, I'm giving a hint of where we're going. This is a macro that works when you open the file, and if you put application.statusbar, and you say, okay, let's say that I think we made it M. Is that what I did? I hope. Show comments, and then shift Q, hide comments. And then how about this? I made another macro for colors. Okay, I'm sure. And then if you do something like this, you should also make in addition to making an auto open, you should make an auto close and just make the status bar false. Okay, and run the macro, and there it puts our little thing in the status bar. Now what we're going to do is go through item by item, not item by item, method by method. The first method, the first alternative method we can use is a method, I'm going to call this the method 2, the goal seek method. And I think you can probably see how this will work already. Here's what I'm going to do before we do this. Let's go to File, and then go to Options, and then we'll go to Formulas, and then we'll switch off the iteration button. Okay, and oops, we have a circular reference down here too, but you know what I'm going to do is, this is the whole cause of the circular reference, so let's switch this off. Now, what we can do if we use the goal seek is we could just, let's set this difference down here to be equal to 0 by changing the det commitment. So let's just make a goal seek to do that. Data, what if analysis, goal seek, it's hardly worth talking about this. Take this difference, make this difference equal to 0, and do that by changing the debt to capital ratio. And oops, we didn't get it exact because I, you know, suppose I can put in the accuracy a little bit here. Is this the one? Let's try this one. Okay, let's make a data. I could blame the circular reference on that, but that's not fair. It's not what caused this to be happen. So if you want to change the accuracy of the goal seek, you can see that. But now remember, we had this problem. So now if I would go to data, what if analysis goal seek, and make this difference equal to 0, remember we were going to change the EPC cost. That worked, but then we get this difference to be 0, so we can do a goal seek here, and then we have a problem here, and we keep going around and around. So there are two problems with the goal seek. The other problem is if you wanted to change this to 80%. Okay, did this work? Did I F48 times F39, okay. And I would have to, oh yes, of course what I have to do is I have to go to data, what if analysis, goal seek. Now I suppose you put a macro around the goal seek, which is what I almost always would do. But still, you'd have to run the macro each time. So, you know, in my opinion, there are at least, let's put a comment here, the problems with this method. Okay. Number one, we have to rerun goal seek all the time. Two, makes multiple goal course, but okay, let's just leave that. Oh, just said it and I forgot it. Okay, shift. How is that supposed to work? Let's see. Shift Control M to show the comments. Shift Control Q to take them off. Now you can see what happened. It went up to the top. Well, I better change this comments somewhere. You see this? Whenever you record a macro like that, make absolutely sure you take that away. As a teaching exercise, I left that in, to show you what not to do. Of course I didn't, but you could believe that if you want. Shift Control M, Shift Control Q. Okay, and let's switch to the third method now. Whenever you have multiple goal seeks, you can use the solver. I'm going to show you the solver now. Please, this is what I'm almost afraid of. Some people might say this is the answer. The solver is the answer. And it's not. Okay. Okay. The solver method, it's kind of like a goal seek. Now, the first thing you have to do is, if you go to your data tab, I just took my solver out. There should, at the end of your data tab, you should have the solver. I don't know why it's not automatically installed. Go to options and add-ins and press go. And actually, I always would put the analysis tool pack for some regression and stuff in there too. You can do it without, but it kind of helps. So in this case, let's change our debt ratio back to 70%. So we've got an error here. We've got problems here. Let's put the EPC cost back to 100,000. Okay. And now our debt ratio is way too high. What we could do with the solver, you can go to data, solver. Oops, I still have it in here. Let's put reset. Okay, what you do is on the top, that's kind of like a goal seek, but please leave that out. Makes a mess. Let's change a cell. Let's change the debt commitment. And let's add a constraint and make this constraint to be equal to 0. Is that okay? Just press solve. And it works just like the goal seek. There's a slight advantage that if you had to do it again, it leaves what you had in here. Now, I suppose the advantage of this method, but I think it's a very clumsy advantage, is that you could also set this difference to 0 by changing the EPC cost. So you essentially can look at the solver as a multiple goal seek. So instead of just changing one variable, now we'll also change the EPC cost. And then let's add another constraint to make this constraint equal to 0 again. And solve that. And now we solve both of them. So it looks like it's better than the goal seek method. Of course, the problem is what happens if you didn't? If you just wanted to change this one to 80% and you didn't want to do this. Now you'd have to go back and take this out. You'd have to go back and take this out of the solver. Press solve. Okay, you understand that. So, the other big problem we've already got the macro. How do I delete the comment? Well, hell, let's just press Shift Control M. So the problems here is this is the biggest problem. It is very slow with big models. I didn't tell you, it doesn't really work with big models. Number two, it clumsy with multiple goal seeks. Number 3, oh, that's what I wanted to say with the goal seek. Does makes cannot work with sensitivity analysis. How about sensitivity tables? So let's, just to illustrate what I mean by that is, let's put a table up down here, and let's say we have a 50% EPS, 50% debt ratio, 60%, whoops, and 70% debt ratio, and we want to get the debt amount. So this would be our kind of one-way data table. What happened just now? Oh, I don't think anything happened. It looks too smooth for me, I guess. Yeah, I think, is it still working? And this debt, this comes from the total debt, total interest rather. This is these two, debt funding is the total amount that's funded, which is 72,000. Oh, that's because we, well, of course, we ran the goal seek. So now if I wanted to make this and figure out the amount of debt for all of our different scenarios, let's do this without the target debt thing. So we have to, this is why it's so clumsy. If we wanted to do it again, we'd have to take this out, delete this, we press solve, it's okay. Change this, shift control P to get rid of that thing. Okay, so now we'd have to go to the solver, solve everything that works. But then if I would make a little baby data table, what if analysis table, and our column input is our debt ratio. Of course, you can pressing F9 1,000. Okay, I'm back. I made a little mistake. Probably a couple of mistakes, but the main one was that I misspelled number of periods, and then it wasn't looping through the number of periods. So now once I did this, I made this function, we put equal debt commitment and press the debt ratio first, then the interest rate array, and then the construction array. Okay, and then we get our number. And now if I change this to 70%, it all still works. No copy and paste macro, no nothing, 80%. And now let's run our goal seek. So now, remember, we couldn't run the goal seek before. Now if I go to, I hope this comes from the, this is the computer debt, this is the target debt. So if we will go to data and what if analysis and goal seek, and I set the difference to a value of 0 by changing the EPC costs, that all works just fine now. No blowing up of the model, anything like that. Let's put this back to 100,000. If the circular reference, remember, just comes from that other horrible thing. Now if I do our data table again, oh, my phone's ringing now. I'm making a video. I'll call you back in 1 minute. and I shade this and go to data, what if analysis, data table, and put my column input as my debt ratio. Okay, as I press the F9 button, whoops.